What is happening, everybody? Good afternoon. It is a true live before lock PGA DFS style, as we are just about 60 or 70 minutes away from the first tee time of the 2021 calendar year. I'm thrilled to have PGA DFS back. I was done being a gardener. Alex and Ben are both joining me today to talk about this. And Alex, now you play all the sports, so you didn't have to go in the garden like I did. But are you excited to have golf back, ready to tackle one of the hardest DFS sports out there?
All right. Well, first of all, we got to hear about this garden thing.
Yeah.
So, like, do you only do that for like 1 month a year? Like, and how does that work? It's like January right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I live in Florida, so we can garden all year round. So what I do in my off season is I prepare. This time I did a huge project where I basically dug up all the grass in my yard and put in a rock bed with a bunch of flowers and vegetables and all that fun stuff. So now during the season, all I got to do is water it and pick it, so fruits of the labor kind of thing. I don't know, something to keep me from going crazy and, show my son, I guess. But Ben, have you ever gardened, or am I the only gardener here?
Oh yeah. You know me. No, I don't eat vegetables, so I don't need to garden. I've been grinding college football, college basketball. That's been my little hiatus over the Christmas break. So I'm not, I've seen a lot of the guys in chat here and there, but I am excited to get the crew back together. We're in Hawaii. Non-cut, but you know what? It's a good warm-up. I like to kind of ease into the season, and this is a good way to do it.
It sure is, and it's the strongest field ever, and we've had some great content come out, and we're going to continue to do so. So make sure you like and subscribe here on our channel, so whenever we do have some content come out or we go live here, you can get notified. And Ben, I just mentioned it is the strongest field ever that's going to assemble here in Maui. But before we get to that, what I want to do for just a couple of minutes is go into the premium tools that we have here at Awesemo. We're always adding new things, so we're going to just run down it quickly what we have to offer on the PGA DFS side. So first, starting off with the PGA DFS projections. Alex, I'm going to let you take over for 30 to 60 seconds. Tell us what we can find in these PGA DFS projections.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, projections are pretty much the baseline for building a DFS lineup, just because you got to figure out who the best plays are, especially for the price. So, I mean, it's not the fact that we have projections, it's really the quality of the data that we're always trying to improve and put in some big changes over the off season to try to get some better results. So excited for that, especially on the range of outcome stuff that's on some of our other pages.
Yeah, it certainly seemed to help out in that regard. And I know you messaged and changed even some standard deviation stuff today to that. So just a couple of things you can find on this projections. Obviously, if you use Fantasy Cruncher, these are the projections that are loaded on there for you. Also, you can find top 6 percentage, win percentage, and a couple of other things, which take that on the back burner because we're going to get into that also in a little bit. But before we do, the PGA rankings, Alex, this is your lettering system. How would you recommend people use this specific tool here?
Yeah, so the PGA rankings were kind of the first thing we put out, or if you don't want to dig into data, it just kind of gives a more simplified version of like who the best value plays are, the best fantasy point options. And then you can use those integrated with the lineup builder to build lineups. I think we just added a Express PGA membership, which is a cheaper way to get in the door here. That's only $2.95 a week, so that will help you if you're on a budget to make some lineups and have some good data behind them.
Yeah, and also comes with that, of course, all of the articles that we provide and a couple of those tools that we mentioned here. So great point. Alex and Ben, another one that we have here, one of the most important tools in PGA DFS is the ownership projections and rankings. I mean, I would say out of all the sports, PGA DFS probably has the most emphasis on ownership. Ben, would you argue with me there, or would you probably agree with me there?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a high variance sport. And, on a week like this, we're obviously going to dive into the plays soon enough. But the reality of the situation, there's very small edges. And when we don't know where guys have been, we don't know what their form is. If you're going to tell me that two guys that Alex has projected basically identical, one is 30% and one is 8%, I don't think one is almost 4 times as likely to beat the other. So you can take advantage of those things. And we're going to be talking, there's only 42 golfers. How do you be unique? How do you leverage? One way to do that is to look at these ownership projections and find maybe a couple guys. You don't want the 6 lowest owned guys, but you want to mix and match. And that's something I really feel strongly in golf people need to take advantage of.
Absolutely. And a way to take that when you find, say, a guy that you might be high on that's low owned, when you go to the ownership projections, Alex, the next thing they can do is go to the top golfers tool and see if their low ownership and their keenness to this guy might actually be one of the optimal plays. And I believe that's what the top golfers tool does for us. Is that how you'd use it?
Yeah, I mean, top golfers is kind of in line with all our other DFS sports where we have some simulations going on. In fact, our whole golf projection model is based on simulations, kind of taking into account all the data. So that's how we figure out what are the chances that a guy's going to win, finish in the top 6, etc. Make the cut, of course. And then recently I've been doing some research, and Jason, you gave me a lot of help kind of figuring out how to best utilize all the strokes gained data. So that's been really interesting. I mean, we can talk about strokes gained at that page in a sec.
Yeah,
but that
coming up in a second here. Yep.
Yeah, those really help figure out who the high upside golfers are.
Yeah, and we, Alex and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about strokes gained and found some useful information. And before we talk about that, I'll mention the strokes gained tool that we have there. There you can go in and see where the golfers are good at in each of the individual 4 categories: strokes gained, putting, around the green, approach, and off the tee. And Alex, we found that there is not as much variance between golfers that are both good at on the approach and around the green. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what I was expecting when we started looking into this is that off the tee would be the thing that really drives variance, like in a good way. And then like we found that around the green and approach really that reduces like the number of bogeys more than it increases the number of birdies, because like obviously you don't really want your guy to be taking a ton of shots on the approach and around the green. So it made sense that like if a guy's really good off the tee, that gives him a lot better chance to hit those birdies. But the thing that was most surprising to me is that putting actually is more valuable as far as variance than around the green and approach. I mean, there's so much variance in putting from week to week that it doesn't really like stop bad putters from having good weeks putting, but being a good putter does confer some advantages over being better around the green and approach.
Yeah, it's some really interesting stuff. And as we just march down the last couple, we have a pro plays, which we always put out for our full field. Now that there's only 42 golfers, a little hard to highlight what we're trying to do. But what those pro plays does, Ben, is just goes to show what we're looking for out of the slate, the plays that we would identify as high values, correct?
Yeah, and it's not just a pure indication of how we're playing, because depending on the contest, it can vary, but it gives you an indication at least of how we're interpreting the pricing and kind of where that floor is. So I really like that tool specifically for cash. We get a lot of questions on who's really safe, and obviously safe in golf doesn't really go together, but we can kind of show you, all right, well, here's the guys we've identified as big time value. That probably means they're going to be popular in tournaments. You definitely want to incorporate them, but you'll have to change it up. So again, it's all about combining some of these tools, using your own flavor to play the contest that you normally play. You don't want to use something that's more cash oriented for a large field GBP and vice versa, but we kind of have everything covered. First tournament of the year, certainly the pro plays next week for Sony will be up and running. Excited to get that launched.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. It's a fun tool that we implemented at the end of last season. And the last two, of course, we have our lineup builder, and of course, if Fantasy Cruncher, which is an add-on. But if you want to access all of these great tools and are not already an Awesemo Plus member, it's a great time to do so, because if you use the promo code 2021, you're going to get 20 days of Awesemo Plus for just $20. And if you want to join us for the year, if you're ready to do that, promo code HAPPY, 20% off of your Awesemo Plus yearly subscription. So Ben, pretty good deals to come in on and get all of the access to those premium tools. But we still need to be able to pick the golfers, don't we? And we do have a very strong field coming up here. We got 8 of the top 10 in the world. So who are you starting your lineup with this week?
So like everything, it depends on a lot of factors. I hate that answer, but you've got 5 guys north of 10K. To me, 4 of them kind of stand out. I put Xander at the back. Justin Thomas, he's the defending champ. He's won this twice. He's absolutely unstoppable. He would be the guy that I would want to go to without incorporating ownership. I think he's the safest. Him and DJ are garnering the most. So for me, it would be Justin Thomas. Rahm is a little against the grain. He's obviously still going to be popular because he's one of the best players in the world. But if I had to go north of 10K, those would be the 2. But the last thing I want to say, and I'll pass it back to you guys, when I actually went to build my lineups, it was a lot harder than I thought. I thought, oh, I'll just take one of these guys. I found myself having to forego the 10K range on some lineups, and I didn't anticipate that happening.
Yeah, I thought pricing for a 42-man field was actually quite good on the DraftKings side. FanDuel, of course, is always going to be a little bit softer just given their salary cap restrictions. But Alex, I've got some anecdotal evidence, whatever you want to call it. I want to see if you're going to buy into any of these theories that I have for you, because I know that, maybe you've heard these, maybe you haven't. But, okay, Justin Thomas, to me, of the guys above 10K, he seems the safest. DJ, well, Dustin Johnson, he's been partying with Paulina. We know that from his Instagram. Xander just announced that he had COVID over Christmas. Bryson DeChambeau's fixated on how far he can hit the ball, and, well, John Rahm just switched golf clubs. So do any of those matter? Meaning Justin Thomas is the safest play, or am I going a little crazy here with these alternative theories, if you will?
Well, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with this range. I mean, it's pretty much the best golfers in the world, like pretty amazing that they all are here this week. But the one that had the best year last year was Dustin Johnson by a large margin. I mean, he's pretty much unstoppable. And I mean, anyone who faded him as the highest owned golfer at the Masters, unfortunately, that didn't work out so well. He's the most expensive as well, which incorporates that, which makes it tough because then you got to find some low price guys to get in with him. But he's really the guy that stands out to me as the best play.
Yeah, I think it's certainly lends to believe. You look at the course history for Dustin Johnson, I don't think he's finished worse than 10th here in the last, 6 tries, 7 tries, something crazy like that. So Ben, given the fact that we know DJ probably doesn't need to pick up a golf club to show up here and be the best golfer, are you in where you rostered a guy above 10K? Are you going to JT, or was DJ a part of your lineups just as much as well?
I have more Justin Thomas than Dustin Johnson, but you're talking about 2 phenomenal plays that are in play in all formats. I mean, I think really if you have the money, you're kind of just picking whoever you want up there. It's more about what do you do with the 5 other spots. Obviously, clicking one name isn't going to cripple your salary, but it's a tough start. You have to start to be cognizant right off the bat. So when I had the money, I went to Justin Thomas. Both of them show consistency. You just mentioned, DJ won in 2018 here. JT won in 2017 and 2020. So 3 of the past 4 events here to kick off the year has been won by one of these 2 golfers. And that just shows.
Throwing Xander too, yeah.
Yeah, and Xander won the other one. So There you go.
So Alex, if there's a guy that you had to fade up here, I think I've made it pretty clear if people have joined me for my content this week that I'm fading Xander. Couple of reasons why. First off, I was probably already going to do it to begin with because he really relied on his putting in the back half of the year. Now, that could be fine here. However, I'd like to try and gamble on the guys like Justin Thomas who have really performed in every category. But then throw in the fact that he did just have COVID on the 25th, said that he is not in shape. I mean, all this leads to believe that he's probably going to win because I'm not going to play him. But it does give me a reason to not play him. Are you joining me there, or are you going to have plenty of shares of Xander Schauffele this week as well?
Yeah, I'm torn. I mean, he's a fantastic golfer as well, but I feel like he's a little bit less exciting than the guy that's priced right above him is Bryson.
Yep.
Where Bryson, he has a ton of variance because of how hard he hits the ball, where Xander is a more like well-rounded player. So I also think I might be under the field on Xander.
Yeah. Ben, are you joining us there? I think from the little bit we've talked this week, it seems like you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, that's the one weird thing about golf. I know we have a lot of new people in chat, which is very exciting. Welcome aboard. I'm excited that people are giving golf a try. When you come in underweight on golf, it's not to say, oh, this guy sucks. It's just a product of what we're dealing with. There's an opportunity cost in this sport that's just kind of a little different. So Xander, he's a phenomenal golfer. I just think when I can get $200 more to someone like Bryson, who has that firepower, and when I could take a couple $100 savings to guys like Cantlay, to guys like Reed, to me, that's more where I'd want to go, considering there's a lot of unknowns with Xander that we can't really quantify.
For sure. Totally agree. All right. Seems like let's talk about John Rahm for a second. Sure. Does the switching of golf club manufacturer, I know that you guys aren't great golfers or don't play golf that much. I shouldn't say that. You guys don't play golf that much since I've played with each of you once. Maybe the only time both of you have ever played golf. So does switching club manufacturers do anything for you?
No.
Okay. Alex, how about you?
I mean, I don't even know what kind of difference that would make. So, yeah, I don't know. I haven't played enough, but okay. I didn't really try to figure that one out.
Sure. I know the guy behind the glass, Jordan Klein, would probably agree with me that it does matter a little bit, but he's probably had time, and he's also the best in the world. He's not me showing up there and playing with new clubs. However, it's just something to, I guess, notate. Maybe there's some carry yardages that he'll have to get used to with his irons. It's primarily with his irons that I would be most concerned about. So, again, do I think it's enough to not play him? Heck no. I still have plenty of shares and much more shares than I do of Xander. That's for sure. All right, let's go on to our next section where we'll talk about a bulk of the golfers in the 9,000 range. But first mention first timers, and kind of a little bit like Augusta, where sometimes first timers do struggle here. There's a lot of undulation on the greens, a lot of different kicks you can get off the slopes from the fairways. So I've got a list of names, and I want you guys to pick who you think is going to perform the best this week. Maybe a little obvious name, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. Abraham Ancer, Carlos Ortiz, Jason Kokrak, Richie Werenski, Scotty Scheffler, Stuart Sink. Actually, I think he's probably been here, but skip him. Sungjae Im and Victor Hovland. So my pick, Victor Hovland. I think he's the hottest golfer in the world right now. Probably a pretty obvious pick. But Ben, do you have someone on there that you think could challenge Victor this week as the best first-timer here at Kapalua?
So certainly if I had to choose, it would be, Hovland's the most expensive for a reason. He played in Europe recently, which I like. Not as long a layup. The other guy that I would go to is Sungjae, just because his game is so well-rounded. We've seen this time and time again. During the Florida swing before the COVID situation, he won Honda, third at API. That does have some similarities to what we've seen. And he's just, again, no glaring weakness in his game. I think he's more suited to play a course for the first time and kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to have pretty mid-ownership talking about Sungjae Im. So, Alex, was Sungjae a guy that kind of stuck out to you, given the fact that he's been pretty consistent over the last year?
He has, man. He's really, he's a grinder. He's on pretty much every event, it seems like. So, one of the more talented, kind of newer players. So, I think he's certainly someone that's going to be in the mix this week.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see, a couple of other guys in this range were maybe not first timers here, but as we go up to the 9,800 range and 9,600, we got a pair of Patricks, which I actually both think make really nice leverage plays, especially off of the Xander Schauffele chalk that I expect to happen at 10K. But Ben, tell me why my guy Cantlay, just nobody wants to own him at 9,800. Do they think he doesn't have enough upside? Do you think he doesn't have enough upside?
So yeah, I think it's a combination that there's something to being 10K and you want to play those guys. If you click one of your names, the last thing that you want to do is click the guy at 9,800. You're immediately like, all right, let me get a reasonable guy, maybe in the lower nines, the high eights, and balance this out, because that puts a big strain on your salary. And I just want to dig into Cantlay a little. I said this yesterday on the show with Tim Frank. To me, it was like a Rory season. It wasn't good. It wasn't up to his standards, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I think people realize. He wasn't like he was missing a ton of cuts. He gained tee to green in every single event in 2020. He missed one cut. To me, Cantlay is just fine. Maybe the upside was capped a little bit. He did win Zoizo late in the year. No problem with Cantlay, especially if people don't want to go to him.
Yeah, for sure. Alex, are you there with us as well, or would you rather go to Patrick Reed, who certainly looks like he's in pretty good form as well? He went out to Dubai and played pretty good there and had a good Masters.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them are fantastic golfers. I am looking at my kind of range of outcome stuff, and I'm projecting that Cantlay is a lower variance golfer than Patrick Reed, which would make me kind of lean towards Reed since I think they're about the same as far as like total strokes gained. But then it comes down to the ownership. So, I mean, pretty much anyone you can play this week. Cantlay is at 11%, Reed's at 17%. So, I mean, that negates any advantage that I just mentioned. So, I mean, I think it's a wash.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. Ben, for me, I already mentioned I'm pretty high on Victor Hovland here in this range as well. I think he could be the hottest golfer in the world, other than Dustin Johnson, who we know obviously is playing great. But outside of Victor, Hideki Matsuyama sits there, and he's 3 for 3 in top 10s coming to Kapalua. He hasn't played bad. In fact, his short game has looked better. So is this a time to jump on Hideki Matsuyama at 9K and maybe lower owned in a field like this?
Yeah, I mean, Hideki hasn't been here in recent years for obvious reasons because you can't get here in normal years unless you win. He hasn't been doing that. When he has been here, though, he seems to like the course. He's another one. His year, he did not find the winner's circle, but incredibly consistent. Only lost in tee to green at the Shriners basically throughout the whole year. His irons are fantastic. I worry that he can't make enough putts, but you know what? You got to live with something. So I will certainly back Hideki here on both DraftKings. I saw it in chat about FanDuel. I don't mind that price. That may temper his ownership even more. So him and Finau, easy plays, fit a lot of builds, and I like that about them both.
Yeah, and they're both here. They both haven't won in quite some time, but they're both here because of the weird COVID rules. If you don't already know in chat, what happened was there was only about 26 winners because COVID knocked out a third of the season. So the TOC changed the requirements to get in, and if you got into the Tournament of Champions, you now got into here. So it extended the field to 45. McIlroy and Hatton withdrew, and Jim Herman got COVID. So 42 players in the field. Alex, getting into this range, Matsuyama and Finau shouldn't be here. They are. Does that mean you're going to play both of them or neither of them?
I think they're both really solid plays. I mean, yeah, I think a little bit of price discount from some of the top guys, and these guys in a normal field are among the best. So I feel pretty good about both of them.
Yeah, I do too. Now, our perennial fade of the Live Before Lock PGA DFS show is Webb Simpson, at least when Ben and I are on. Alex, you tend to go the other way, though, and play Webb a decent amount. He just got here yesterday out to Maui. Who knows what he was doing before? That's just the news that I had heard. I'm sure that doesn't matter much in terms of how much you're going to play him, but at 9,400 in a strong field like this, I did feel like the price might be a little high for you to click his name.
Yeah, Webb Simpson's one of the guys that got dinged the most by my new updates to the model because of his around the green and approach skills. So, I mean, he does gain more strokes than some of the guys above him, like Reed and Cantlay, but is lower variance. So that is one reason why maybe I'm kind of off him a little bit.
Okay, makes sense. Now, we go into the value section. Obviously, if we want to play a lot of these guys, some of these guys, we're going to need a lot of them coming up in here. So problem is that a lot of people are also going to them. A lot of chalk in this range. So guys like Cameron Smith and Abraham Answer this week, Ben, very popular, 20+% on both of them. Does that mean you're going to fade them, play one, or play both and just really go against the grain with your other four?
So again, I think it's a product of the lineup themselves. If you really like those guys, and I certainly Answer as someone that's been playing well for a while now, you can do it and you can still leverage and you can be fine. You just have to know that you've kind of put in that kind of chalky guy, and it can't be around 3 or 4 other ones that fit that mold. So I do have some of those guys. I think the product of the field liking them more than me. There's a lot of names in that range. I think this is where you can start to mix it up. You can build some correlated stacks, whether it's because Champ is there. Then you've got Kisner, who's a completely different type of player. So this is a range where I think we really start to see where the money could be made this week.
Definitely. Totally agree. And it's kind of interesting just the way it panned out, Alex, but we've got, 8,400 at the top, probably the most highly owned, Cameron Smith. Then we got at 83, and Adam Scott is mixed in there. We have 5 International President's Cup teamers. So Sung J M, Abraham Answer, Adam Scott, Cameron Smith, they're all right there. They're all relatively similar ownership, maybe a little bit lower on Im. Do you think it's just DraftKings messing with us, or do you think it ended up that way, that they did it for fun because they know they're all on the International President's Cup team?
I honestly have no clue about that, but what I do know is that DraftKings really bases their salaries off the Vegas odds.
Sure do.
So when it comes to a mid-range guy, Adam Scott stands out as probably the one that gains the most strokes of the bunch, but he also has the least upside. So as maybe like the third or fourth guy in your lineup, I think you don't really need a top 5 finish necessarily. So I think he's someone I'm kind of mixing in a good amount. But yeah, I'm not expecting him to go out and win the tournament.
Yeah, Ben, a guy that almost had a chance to win the tournament last year, or at least the first couple of days, played great. Also on the International President's Cup team in this range. All 5 of the guys are. It's Joaquin Niemann. And I like him this week. He got COVID in the worst possible time for him, obviously during Masters week, but bounced back the next 2 starts after and looked pretty good. And his birdie rate looked very good. So I like Joaquin Niemann again here this week. He played good enough last year, and at 8,300, I think he presents nice value. It looks like the ownership should be lower than Cam Smith as well.
Yeah, and that, to me, I do think one of the overarching points is, and it's a natural thing that people, because we haven't seen these guys play, they look at, well, what did they do in recent form that's not that recent, actually? Yeah. And it's hard to quantify. Does the break give these guys a hard reset? Cam Smith is playing out of his mind a couple months ago. Maybe that ownership is inflated and that form has regressed. To me, Joaquin Niemann always live to outscore his placement point when you get 72 guaranteed holes with a guy that's going to gain off the tee, can get hot with the putter, still very young, of course, only going to get better. I like Niemann a lot this week at that price range.
Yeah, I do as well. And thank you all for joining us here just about 40 minutes before the first tee. We love that. Make sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel if you're just stopping on in as we move down the pricing list a bit. You mentioned a guy, Cameron Champ, earlier, Ben. I absolutely love this guy in a no-cut situation. He's one of these guys that I'm pretty much, if he's under 8K, auto-clicking his name because he has the ability to make eagles better than everybody else, and that's a lot of DraftKings points. So decent year last year. Granted, he got super hot with the putter over the first 2 rounds. I don't know that we're going to see that again. However, his stats have gotten consistently better all throughout his bag, not just his driver, which we know is one of the best. But Alex, did you see in your update that it looks like, same thing I'm saying, Cameron Champ looks like he's trending toward a more consistent golfer rather than the variability we saw over the last 2 years?
Oh, well, actually, I have him as the highest variance golfer in the field.
No surprise, yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, that makes his odds of winning go up considerably compared to golfers who gain a similar amount of strokes. So I do feel like in a week where he's not popular, I would be kind of interested in this high upside play, but he's quite popular. I mean, pretty much every golfer is this week above 7K, so I don't see a huge advantage in going to Cameron Champ. And no, I want to mention too that part of the logic for this is that this course really doesn't produce a ton of eagles. Last year, it looks like there were only about a dozen eagles in the whole tournament. So, I mean,
negates that advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I can tell you the 5th hole is definitely gettable, but the other 3 par 5s, 9 is always plays into the wind. 18 is a 700-yard hole. And then 15, you can't really extend your drive out because the fairway runs out, especially long and left, and can put you in trouble. So most golfers don't hit driver off the tee there. So again, like you said, plus the green is super small and extremely undulated. So no surprise to see the eagle rate come down. A guy like Kevin Kisner is legitimately the polar opposite golfer of Cameron Champ, Ben. It's so funny to see these guys priced $100 away because legitimately you can't get further away on how they get it done spectrum. Is Kevin Kisner in play for you this week?
Not as much as Champ, but he is, particularly because I think you can build in different ways. He does something completely different than Champ. He's obviously, I mean, he's not even in the same stratosphere off the tee, but he's a great iron player. He's a great putter. So if you think, I think one of the great things about DFS golf in particular, you can strategize what's important to the course, and then you can build accordingly. So say you think, you know what, I don't think driving distance matters at all here. Well, that's a big bump down to a guy like Champ and a big bump up to a guy like Kisner. You can build lineups accordingly. You can use these tools, and that is one way to get advantage. So I try to group my guys in that way. And Kevin Kisner fits builds that maybe use Webb, maybe use Kevin Na, who we'll get to, guys like that.
Yeah, another guy that I'm interested in this range, maybe a little bit more so than Kevin Kisner. He's a winner, former winner here at the Tournament of Champions. I think maybe even the last time he was here. Alex, it's Sergio Garcia. We saw him win a golf tournament putting with his eyes closed. That's not going to show up in our stats, but it actually happened. Sergio Garcia in play for you this week. For me, he is. I think he presents good value in this high 7K range.
He looks like a kind of he's priced appropriately, so I think he's in the mix. But now that I know that he won putting with his eyes closed, now you got to wonder what he can do with his eyes open. So sign me up.
Love it. Then in this range, a couple of guys I didn't mention, I'm sorry, and I see in chat that they asked about. And it's great because I can just tell you pick one or the other here because they're priced right next to each other and relatively highly owned. It's Harris English versus Dan Berger. For me, I'm going Dan Berger. Believe it or not, I'm going to a guy that I don't normally play. I'm a perennial fade of Harris English at this point. Ben, does the Harris English run end with a win like it did Jason Kokrak, or are we going to get it right eventually?
Yeah, I mean, you can just eventually we'll get it right. Listen, Harris English has had an incredible run here. He's playing very well, but again, a lot of that value has been sucked out. He's priced to me towards the premium, and it's kind of incorporating that play. He needs to maintain it. It's not like if he plays like that, you're getting extreme value. I would rather have Berger. I'd rather not play either of them if I honestly had my choice and go get the money for Finau or bump down to Neiman, Sungjae, Adam Scott.
Yeah, Alex, what do you do in a situation like Harris English where, you know, if we're looking at a longer term view of statistics and results, it's not that good. And then all of a sudden, you know, the last 40 rounds or 52 rounds, he's looked like one of the best in the world. I mean, how do we adjust to that quickly enough to make sure we don't, you know, miss it or we're not behind it?
Yeah, that one's tough because it does take a significant amount of rounds to really get a good idea of how good a golfer is. And then there's this recency issue that Ben was talking about earlier where the last round of golf in the PGA was a while ago. So like even the most recent data from Harris English isn't all that recent. So, I mean, that being said, over the last year, it looks like he gained in my database here minus 1.7, or he gained 1.7 strokes per round, which is a very solid number. So it wasn't just that he kind of closed the year hot. He was solid all year.
Yeah, he was. No doubt about it. All right, moving on into the mid-7 range. Got a guy, Billy Horschel, who actually I think is pretty appropriately priced, $7,600. Looks like mid-ownership. I think he presents better value than Kevin Kisner, Ben. Am I crazy to think that? Or did you just go to Kisner, find the $200 every time it was Horschel or Kisner?
No, I think that's pretty fair. They're similar. So the way I looked at it, you have Champ and Kisner, and then to a lesser extent, you have Sergio and Billy Ho. Sergio is more of a, you know, he's a very strong driver of the ball. He's not to the extreme of Champ, but that's kind of how I broke that up. And to me, I would actually go to the cheaper of both. I would rather have Sergio over Champ, and I would rather have Billy Ho over Kisner. I think his ability to get hot with the putter. He's a Florida guy, and I know we're not in Florida, but it is the same grass type. That could be useful. I don't mind Billy Ho in a non-cut. He's excelled late in the FedEx Cup playoffs a lot. I don't know if there's something to that, whether it's shorter fields, guaranteed 4 rounds. You could do worse in the mid-range than targeting him.
So, Alex, I'm going to throw one more guy in there before I give you the floor on these. Well, will be 5. This last guy that I'm going to throw in really took me for a ride. He sucked me in hard after his Augusta performance. He came in 13th. He had a couple of eagles. Everything looked good. He shows up to Mayakoba and just completely just S's the bed. You know, I mean, it's not even close. He wasn't even close to the cut line. It's Mark Leishman. At 5% owned, like, should I get excited? Maybe actually, in terms of your ownership ranking, he is number 42 of 42. Does that mean we should play him or just straight up avoid the tall Aussie?
Yeah, I mean, this one really stands out based on the last year's results. He was much worse than all the other guys in this price range.
Yep.
And then that begs the question, like, why are the Vegas odds so high that he ended up being priced there? I mean, he's still around the same odds to win according to the sports books as Munoz and Todd. Sometimes there are factors that can artificially drive that number up. Course history being one of them, where it's like people like to bet on the previous year's winner, or like I know there was some Webb Simpson thing where like he named his daughter after the course, like just all that fun stuff. So let me throw this to you guys. Like, is there some reason why Vegas people are just betting on Leishman at these odds that are comparable to golfers that are much better?
I don't even think, his results here are okay, right? I think in the couple of times a top 10 or so, but each of those two times, Ben, when he played, there were only 30 golfers in the field and certainly didn't have the John Rahms and Justin Thomases quite at their height. So, Ben, I'll throw it to you. I mean, I think I believe I've suggested before that there is some truth to course history and course fit more than there is history. And I just think this is a product of the field being small and Leishman having decent form then. I think he's a worse golfer now, though.
Well, that's the question. I think the reason that people are still backing him, and I can say when I say people, I also mean me, because I'm stuck with this guy, is just that he's not a young guy, and the form long term, very long term, he's a much better golfer. And this reminds me, Alex, you've been on the show for majors. You've talked about Henrik Stenson a couple times, where his data long term is phenomenal, but right now he might just not be the same player. And I think Leishman may fall into that category, but if this 2-month break gives him a reset, 7,400 in this field is a huge steal for a guy that, I mean, he's won 5, 6, 7 events on tour, number of top fives. He's got the pedigree. It's just last year, his form was atrocious to the point of not even being playable.
Yeah, and the fact that he's the lowest owned golfer, Alex, is that almost like an auto in this field? Is that almost like an auto roster at least 10%? I mean, no one's going to want to own this guy, it looks like.
Man, that's a tough question. I personally didn't land on him, but man, there's some guys in this price range that are among the highest owned of the tournament. So when you get a guy that's this price range and the lowest owned, I mean, that stands out a lot. I just I think I might try to find some guys in this range that have a little bit better past year form, although I do see, Ben, what you're saying, that if you go back a couple of years, he looks like the best golfer in this range.
Yep. No, he sure does. Ben, two guys Alex mentioned that are probably going to be two of the highest owned golfers on the slate. One of them is likely to be. It's Carlos Ortiz and Ryan Palmer. And don't get me wrong, Carlos Ortiz is coming in great form, so I think that makes sense. Ryan Palmer's coming in for 4th and 17th, so also pretty good. He was in the optimal lineup here last year. So, I mean, I guess I'm making a case for him to be, but 30% owned Ryan Palmer just sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. So I'm fading. Ben, how are you handling a 30% owned Ryan Palmer?
Yeah, I mean, I've got experience with chalk Ryan Palmer, and it rarely ends well. I am getting to him in some spots just because he is a very useful price point. Yep. And Ortiz is there as well, and he's going to suck up a lot of ownership. Lanto is there. And Palmer, he does some things well. He's a good ball striker. He's good in the wind. This is a coastal track. Wind could be a slight issue. So I get it, but it's really about fitting your lineup. If you talked about Abraham Ancer and some of these other guys. If you have some very popular plays, I'm not saying it has to be Leishman, but that would be the time to deploy a guy like Leishman. If you've leveraged at the top and you've been very different, you might go to Ryan Palmer and say, you know what, I just want someone to kind of hold the ship steady, do his thing, not come in last and kill me. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish in the lower ranges.
Yeah, Alex, how do you handle a situation like this? A guy like Palmer, who does seem like a solid fit, especially in the 7K, but he's going to come in uber chalk. Are you looking to just straight fade in tournaments and maybe play him in cash, or what's your stance here?
I agree completely with what Ben said, where it's just kind of like you got to build your roster in a way that, like if you have Palmer, you need some other way to gain differentiation, because like certainly he's not the guy that'll help you get first solo. But I think Ortiz and Palmer are both very valuable pieces to the roster this week, and that's why they're so heavily owned. Because once you go down below the 7K mark, the quality of golfer decreases precipitously. I mean, the next few guys are pretty decent, but then after Kevin Na, the quality goes down quite a bit. And I thought it was cool that Jason, I think I saw you posting about the like salary of each guy in this field when they won the tournament, and how like maybe there was like a handful of guys that were like under 7K throughout the year, and those are like, again, the guys that are under 7K. So like they weren't even that good when they won their tournaments. So yeah, how are you feeling? Like, are these guys just kind of like the last guys in, because once you go below it, it's tough?
Yeah, you kind of have to. And I think with these guys, Lanzo Griffin and Mackenzie Hughes, who are the next two guys up on the board, I actually, and if you're playing over on FanDuel, Lanzo Griffin is only 7,200 over there, which is 200 from the min price. I think that's good value. He showed up here last year, again, pretty decent form, played well. He was in the optimal lineup along with Ryan Palmer. So I think Lanzo Griffin is decent. Mackenzie Hughes in his one start here, I think he came in 17th or 22nd, somewhere in that range. But what I like about him is that we know he's the best putter in the world right now. So over 4 days, if that form, the putting form continues, he should be able to reach value at 68 or 6,900. So I found myself getting to him a lot as that last guy in, because when you dip down, I'll mention Stuart Sink for a second. And Ben, you and I have talked about him a lot. He's got his son on the bag officially now for the year. But maybe what we didn't know, and now we do, is he picked up 15 yards of carry distance, adding more speed to his driver and doing kind of the Bryson thing. So it's clearly helped the results. I don't mind him in this range. In fact, I'm playing him over Kevin Na because I don't play Kevin Na in no-cut events. I just don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little worry there with Na, but, you got to kind of embrace that. This is where, as Alex just talked about, so the way this field is formulated is all the winners. And there's a lot of guys in golf that literally have won one event in a year and then their form falls off because they did it in February. And now they're here, and it's just like, how is this guy in the field? So when we get to the lower sixes and just the sixes in general, it's really trying. What I do first is just allocate, how did they get here? Is it because of accumulation of playing good? Did they win and maintain form, or do they literally have one win and nothing else to show for it? So Stuart Sink, to his credit, obviously he did win an event, but he's had some other decent showings centered around that. Tailed off at the end in November, but at least he didn't just win one tournament and do nothing else.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Alex, would you say would you go along that line of thinking when trying to analyze these lower guys, see if they've popped off recently and mix them in there? Because if you're trying to stack, or even if you look at the optimal last year, it had two guys below 6,500, one at 65, one at 64. So it's likely that we get at least one of these guys in the optimal lineup this week, right? I mean, just by the way it works out.
Yeah, I'm looking at a lot of my lineups with Ryan Palmer, and like almost none of them, he's the lowest price golfer. So I am dipping down into like one of these 6 to 7K guys in most lineups. And that's really to get more studs in there. So I think Sink stands out as one of the best ones. In a lot of lineups, I'm going down even farther. It's kind of just more like who am I crossing off? So those guys would be Brian Gay, Robert Streb, and Andrew Landry. I guess like these guys just like don't look like they're good golfers like over the past year at all. Michael Thompson, Martin Laird, and Hudson Swafford as well, just kind of like average golfers. So that's kind of leaving me with Nick Taylor and Richie Warinsky is kind of my punt plays. So I have a ton of Richie Warinsky at 6K, and like maybe I need you guys to talk me off the ledge here, because like, why is he 6K? Like in my data, he looks like he's quite a bit better than some of the guys above him.
Yeah, I think there's probably just the way DraftKings want to do their pricing is, a tiered structure, obviously, and I think Werenski just fit in there. For Robert Streb, I'll take Streb and Landry. We've got a couple of questions on Landry in the chat, so I'll chat about him first. He's been here before, and he's just a guy that when he makes the week and he scores, I think the lowest he scored was 60 points when he actually played all 4 rounds. So he's a guy that likes to make birdies. He's coming off a 4th place finish in his last start, so decent. Robert Streb, he's actually looks like going to be the highest owned. And the reason why is he won his last start at the RSM Classic. And the last time he did that, win a golf tournament, was the RSM Classic. And 2 months later, after winning, he came in 8th here in Kapalua. So going to your course history thing, Alex, I think that's probably where people are leaning toward with Streb. I don't mind it at a min price. We got to find a reason to play these guys. It's probably a reason to play Streb. He has some familiarity with the course. So I get that. The Andrew Landry thing I get. So I guess that leads to me to believe Brian Gay is pretty much the only guy that I just can't believe is here. He shouldn't be here. It should be Wyndham Clark. We should be talking about how Clark is a good play this week. We're not. We're instead talking about Brian Gay, and I just can't play him. He's the one guy that I have the least of. Ben, how about you? Are you with me there, or are you pretty much fading all these guys?
I kind of split the difference. So Brian Gay, Hudson Swafford, Michael Thompson, Streb, none of those guys really touched my lineups. I will say quickly to Rinsky, I think one of the reasons that it's, I don't want to say misleading because I was forced into him, as well as that he beats up on some of the worst fields. He rarely plays events that Dustin Johnson and John Rahm and those guys are in. So some of his starts, you're like, oh, wow, this guy's not bad. He's making cuts. He's making cuts against fields that aren't like this. Now, that is one thing that's a little different. Landry, I got to a little more than I thought to as well. He's a Texas guy, maybe with the wind, can get hot. Placement points being outscored is really what I'm banking on there. But this was a range. Again, I would have told you on Monday, I'll probably end in the Kokrak, Ortiz, Palmer area. I was forced to funnel in here to take some cheapies, just the way lineup construction was built.
I like it. I think that makes sense. Alex, I might be a tad excited. You certainly can hear it in my voice. I've had maybe 3 weeks of no golf, so I'm certainly ready for it again. In this range, you said Werenski and Nick Taylor are your punt plays. Are you using them in the same lineup when you're going through your lineups? I found on FanDuel, that was actually happening to me quite a bit as I try and really jam 4 guys above 10,000. That's where I did it. I didn't do it on DraftKings, however.
Yeah, on DraftKings, it looks like Nick Taylor. I have some lineups where I have him and a guy below him, which it looks like I have Streb and Werenski kind of mixed in there. Some Swafford. I'm surprised at how much of these punt plays I'm getting to, and I guess it's just because, like, based on my simulation, that like the getting to more of the highest priced golfers does help with your chance of winning a tournament. But yeah, it's like you can't feel real great about any of these guys, and it's not like they're even low owned because I mean, Streb is one of the higher owned golfers at 17% ownership this week.
Yeah, 2 guys that we just talked about, or one guy we talked about was Jason Kokrak. Ben, you mentioned him. You said you kind of ended in that range. As I'm just kind of circling back and seeing guys that maybe we haven't mentioned, there's 42 golfers in the field. So with an hour here to talk, we'll probably get to talk about everybody at least for a couple of seconds. I got a couple in mind that we haven't mentioned. Kokrak was one, but the question just asked in the chat was another guy we hadn't talked about, and it's Brendan Todd. And Ben, here's a guy that, along with Mackenzie Hughes, can absolutely light it up with the putter. He hurt his toe, of all things. He hurt his toe back around the Zozo Championship. Played bad, but finally got the putting stroke back the last 2 starts. So at 7,200, would you rather go to Todd over Kokrak here, or are they both in your play for you, or are you not playing either? I think you're playing Kokrak, you mentioned. So
I do have a little Kokrak, which is, for me, that's a step in the right direction because I never play him. The problem I have with Brendan Todd is that his ball strike, and he does it differently. I give him credit. He can be effective, but his ball striking is so weak consistently. He has to putt. And we've seen, even when the putter cools down, not where he's losing strokes, where he's only gaining a couple strokes, the finish really suffers. So for a guy like that, I know off the tee is not as important here, but I'm just not sold on his approach game right now. OHL, which is where he rebounded in December, that is not this. I know there's some similarities, But to me, the par fives here are a little more important, and I'm not sold on Brendan Todd this week.
Yeah, I think he's a fine GPP target. I think he's going to be 12% owned roughly. So in a 42-man field, I don't mind getting leverage in, say the $5 or $10 on DraftKings. He's not in my $400 lineup or my $200, anything like that. Nothing important, but I do like him as a GPP target. Alex, two guys for you, Kokrak and Todd. Both had pretty good years last year. Kokrak with a win. Is Kokrak a pretty clear, in a way, favorite now over those two? And is that why the ownership is there, or should it be a little closer?
Yeah, I think that he does stand out over a couple of guys above him with Leishman and Munoz, and then Brendan Todd as a guy with a little bit better form over the recent stretch. I know like he had a run where he just like was off the charts with the putter. So that does make me feel a little less confident with him, but yeah, he also Vegas seems to back this up because they have him at 89-1, where the other three guys I mentioned are around 130 to 140.
Yeah, I think it's I guess for me, in my eyes, I think it's a little closer just because I know how good of a putter Brendan Todd is. But if you look at the stats from Kokrak over the last little bit, he's been otherworldly with the putter. So also that miscut at the Masters is a little misleading. He's in the middle of the fairway on 15, and he had a mud ball, and that mud ball sent his ball into the 16 pond. That's why he missed the cut. So maybe a little of recent form, not so much. It should be a little bit better on Kokrak. So I actually don't mind him. I think he's going to be high owned. So I don't like to over leverage Jason Kokrak ever, and especially if he's going to be highly owned. I definitely don't. Had a couple of people ask about Billy Horschel in the chat. I mentioned that I like him quite a bit. I like him over Kevin Kisner, and Ben seemed like he totally agreed with me there. Alex, did we get your thoughts on Billy Horschel? I think we did.
I think he's.
If not, you can give him to us again if you want.
Yeah, he looks like a very solid play.
Yeah.
A guy with probably the best form in the last year of anyone aside from Kevin Kisner over the last in this price range and below. So probably one of the best plays at that range.
Great point. Had somebody ask in chat, is volatile a stat? No, it's not really a stat, but the way that Alex does his projections using certain strokes gain metrics, variability is certainly in there, or variance is certainly in there. So variance, volatility, it kind of all interjects there. So Ben, a couple of guys I definitely haven't talked about. I've made note here. One of them is the weekly debate of FanDuel price versus DraftKings price, and it's Sebastian Munoz. He's literally the same price on both sites. One site you have 60,000 salary, the other you have 50. So I'm getting most of my exposure on FanDuel for Sebastian Munoz. He's a guy that can really light it up. He's played here before, had a good start at the Masters, then it kind of fell apart. So Ben, are you doing the same thing as me? Or if you're not playing on FanDuel, are you getting to him in DraftKings at all?
Not really. And I think he's one of the candidates along with Cameron Smith where I'm not sure where the game is actually at. He had a tremendous run. Got into the Masters top 20. Then the wheels kind of fell off, couple missed cuts to close the year, and now we're here. He's a Bermuda guy, can score in bunches. We know that, but I still don't know exactly where Brandon Munoz, that's not a real person, where Sebastian Munoz is in terms of an overall play. Is he better than guys like Leishman? Like this is a range where you have a lot of moving parts. And I think for tournaments, you can make a case for basically everyone, but I would rather have Billy Ho. I'd rather have Sergio. And honestly, even though the volatility, I would rather take a flyer on Leishman. So Munoz probably got squeezed for me this week.
Munoz got squeezed for me on DraftKings all the way through. I just, playing not quite as equal volume, but pretty close on both sides. I just took advantage of the price difference. Alex, are you joining me? I know you play on both sites. Are you doing that, or was he pretty much a squeeze out on both sides?
Yeah, I agree that Munoz is a little bit harder to get to. He just compared to, I think this is why Carlos Ortiz and Ryan Palmer are so popular, is you get even better Vegas odds for a cheaper price tag. So Munoz does look like he's a little bit overpriced this week.
He does. Somebody asked us if we said somebody might withdraw. No, I'm not trying to go out there and say someone's going to withdraw or has mentioned. My theory on three golfers is I don't play them in no cuts. It's Kevin Na, it's Jason Day, and it's Henrik Stenson, because they've all burned me more than once by withdrawing at a no cut. So I just don't do it. I'm not saying they're hurt or anything like that. Don't take that. If you want to play Kevin Na, I totally understand the play. It's a decent play in this range. It's a great putter. Plus, his form looked pretty good at the Masters if you want to go back that far. I know it's a couple of months. But, all right, there is one other guy that we haven't talked about. And I guess, I'm waiting till 155 to mention my biggest play on the slate.
Oh.
But he is my biggest play on the slate. He's come down to $8,800. He's still a top 10 ranked golfer in the world. He just went to Dubai less than a month ago and came in the top 10. It's Collin Morikawa. And I know that we have, all of us have maybe debated about Morikawa on this show, going both ways. But at 8,800, Ben, is he starting to intrigue you? I know you were on him for a good part. You were first off him, then you got on him. Then we both got back off. Are you ready to jump back on? Because I am.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is an elite iron player, a guy that we still don't know. I know it seems like we know a lot about him, but we don't. It's still very early in his career. The price, we've said this before, and Hovland's in this bucket as well. We could look back next year and say, can you believe this guy was 8,800 here? And that could mean one of two things, that he's 11,000 now, or that he's not even here because he didn't have a good year. So I get it. I've heard he's testing out a new putter. He wasn't a great putter to begin with, so I don't know how much worse it could get. You're targeting him because of the ball striking. I like Finau more, but you're never going to – I mean, he's a major winner. He's a multiple-time winner on tour already. He's an incredible player.
Yeah, Alex, he tried a couple of different putters at the end of last year. One of them was one of the ugliest putters I've ever seen. Luckily, it only lasted one round, and then he went back to his I'll call it just a blade style, same one that Tiger has used most of his career. So take away testing out a new putter. Has Collin Morikawa come back into a value range for you where you're willing to jump in, or do you think Tony Finau is still the better play here?
Morikawa is kind of interesting because I feel like there was a point last year where people thought he was the best golfer on the tour almost.
Me being one of them.
Yeah, I wasn't going to name any names, but no, I'm just kidding. Since then, he's been pretty inconsistent, especially this new season, only making 3 or 5 cuts. So we know he's got a lot of talent. It seems like he has a nose for winning. But yeah, I'm kind of curious how his ownership's going to shake out, because it's like the estimation of how talented he is so much higher than any sort of like stats from this year that I'm not exactly sure how that's going to shake out. But I find it kind of interesting that in this tournament, like there are 3 guys that I really feel like got a ton of buzz last year. There was Dustin Johnson, Bryson, and Morikawa. So I feel like he might be one of the more hyped up players. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that the wave, the trio of new guys, the Wolf, Hovland, and Morikawa has kind of set the tone for what we should expect for these young guys, which is not the case. These guys are 3 superstars. I think Dustin Johnson had the culmination of something he's been working on and had a fire lit under his bum by his best buddy, Brooks Koepka. I think Bryson is making the waves because he transformed his body. But in terms of this week, I don't think that Bryson's distance advantage is really going to be able to play out that much. I think there's a couple of holes that he'll have it, but the golf course plays already long to begin with, and the holes where it does play super long, it's incredibly downhill. So I don't know. I like Bryson because I think he's going to be lower owned this week. But Morikawa and Cantlay projecting lower owned gets me salivating almost every time. And we'll try and come close to the lock here to see if I'm going to be salivating longer or I'm just excited that they are 10% and they're not going to be. But Ben, ultimately, where do you think these guys end up this week? Do you think the 10% projection is going to end up being right? Or do you think they come in a little higher?
So, yeah, obviously the first week of ownership is always a little wonky because it's just very hard without recent form. And Morikawa, I do think there is something to, and maybe I overrate this, but I do think when a lot of people play DFS golf, and maybe sporadically, and this is a week, they rely on kind of name recognition / what that guy has done for you. And most people, I think, when they think of Morikawa, it leaves a good taste in their mouth. He's someone that's paid them off multiple times. Obviously broke through it in a major when he was very popular that week.
Super
Things
popular,
like that matter.
Same price. Yeah.
So I think people will not hesitate to click in his name, even if his recent form hasn't been stellar. So in that regard, I do think that he could push up some ownership, and that makes me somewhat skeptical in certain tournaments.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. So now let's go into our hot takes here, where we have a lot of fun with, and I'm going to kick it off with a guy that, again, he's a great golfer. He's one of the best in the world, but he's really relied on his putting recently, and just the information that I'm getting, I don't love it. So I've got Xander Schauffele, who has come either in first or second in the last 2 years here. I've got him finishing outside of the top 20 this week. I just don't think he's going to get it done. However, he's actually, if you look at his DraftKings points log, he's done this a couple of times where he's finished either 15 to 25th in the tournament and scored very highly, because he does have a good eagle rate, birdie streaks, all that kind of stuff. So we end up being an okay play on DraftKings, but in terms of finishing position, I've got him outside the top 20. That is my hot take for the week. I'll let Alex go next.
Well, unfortunately, Brooks Koepka isn't on the slate this week.
Yep.
Because he didn't win any tournaments, kind of along the lines of what my take was last time. But based on the Vegas odds, it does kind of penalize guys that don't drive the ball very far. So I feel like people may undervalue a guy like Adam Scott that has very strong strokes gained, but just doesn't have a ton of upside at a mid-range price. That's someone that is a key part of my strategy, even though he's not getting a ton of birdies and eagles, I guess.
Okay, Ben.
All right, we ready? We had a good run last year in the hot take department. Before we do that, I'm gonna incorporate a little Lofty and a little Josh Engelman for two important reasons. One, Josh Engelman would be yelling at me if I didn't ask for more likes. We got a lot of new people in here. We're going to pump those up. And then Lofty would really kill me. I thought he was crazy. I'm not going to lie. 50,000 subs on YouTube happening faster. We're going to do a huge giveaway. We want to do it by the Super Bowl. So I know we have a lot of new faces in here. Like and subscribe. We have so many shows. I'm on a college football show for the national championship. We're going to be doing college basketball, obviously NBA in full swing, Saturday and Sunday NFL. You guys don't want to miss out on all the content. So liking and subscribing, hit the notification bell, easiest way to do that. But this hot take, like I said, I'm going to ease into it this year. We're not going to get crazy. The winner of this tournament will have not won last year. So what I'm basically saying is either Tony Finau or Hideki is going to win the Tournament of Champions, even though they're not a champion per se. That is my hot take to get this year started.
Yeah, and you got a couple more in there. Abraham Ancer, Scotty Scheffler. I really like that one as well. And of course, Alex, let me ask you. This is from a fan perspective, all right? Tony Finau, guy has not won in 4 years. The only tournament he won was an alternate field event, the Puerto Rico Open. If he wins the Tournament of Champions, are you going to remove him from that list? Or does he stay on the no-win list because this is not a real event?
That's a good question. I mean, you'd have to kind of put an asterisk next to that because of how he is kind of
not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
And then he comes next, he would get to come back next year and defend if he doesn't win. He's going to end up, Tony Finau's legacy, he's going to win this event 5 years in a row, but he's going to have no other victories. And he has to win this to stay here because he knows he can't win any other tournament. That would be quite a move to get this started.
That would be the epitome, certainly, of Tony Finau's career, who has been close. I can't even tell you how many times Webb Simpson beat him this year. He threw away at least 3 tournaments. He's been involved in majors. I mean, it is time for him to win. It would just be so funny that it happens to come here. And then you got things like Scotty Scheffler and Abraham Ancer. Their first PGA Tour win could be the Tournament of Champions. That's just the COVID impact here for you. So, all right, with 6 minutes left before lock, I'll mention if you're interested, of course, in more PGA content, showdown contests are they're very good. DraftKings continues to put out good ones. They continue to fill up. Alex puts out daily showdown projections, so check out that. And of course, I'll accompany it with an article highlighting some of the stats that had happened from the previous day and a couple of my plays for the slate. And of course, Ben, you're going to be on tomorrow, correct, on a betting show, which before tee off, so you might even have a couple of matchup bets or golf bets for round 2, right?
Absolutely. And stay tuned. Obviously, it's the first week of everything, but Jason, you could speak to this. Plenty of videos out there. You've been doing your top 5 faves, top 5 values, and some betting content. I will certainly have an article posted each and every week because, one of the things here that we've done, and you guys, I'm sure are familiar, oddshopper.awesemo.com does a ton of stuff on the betting side. It's not just for football though. You go, and we've talked about the odds here. Alex has mentioned it several times about the outright market. You will be amazed how big the fluctuations are between books. A guy's 50-1 at one spot, he's 80-1 at another. I can't stress how much that adds up over time if you are betting. So going to OddShopper, making sure you're getting the best value, not just on the outrights, but on the matchups. That's something we'll be talking about tomorrow morning for the betting show, because with the wind, we'll see who putts well. There's little things you can take advantage of, not just for showdown, but to rack up some money in the betting side.
For sure. And just another quick note on that, Patrick Cantlay, he was one of the guys that I wanted to bet on in the first beginning of the week on my show with Jeff, and he was 16-1 at the time. And when I went to write up my article, went to OddsShopper, and he was 20-1 on FanDuel. So just a great tool to use before you go on and make those bets. Make sure you're getting the best route. So, all right, Alex, who's going to win this golf tournament? That's how we're going to end this show. Ben already said that it's going to be somebody that didn't win last year.
Yeah, that's right.
So you give me who you think's going to win, and I'll tell you that I think Justin Thomas is going to defend his title. So you guys know who I think. Patrick Cantlay is going to come second. That's my 1-2. So Alex, who's your 1? And sure, you can give me a number 2 as well.
Well, the trend has been that the highest owned golfer of the week will win the tournament. So I got to go with Ryan Palmer.
Oh no! Jeez, please no.
That is a perfect way to end the show.
It really is. Alex, thank you for that. I really hope Ryan Palmer does not win. But if he does, you can still expect Ben and I to be here next week for the Sony Open. It is the first full field event, 132 players. And let me tell you something. If Ryan Palmer does end up winning, Alex, you're forced almost to come back on the show to defend your title there in that regard. But until then, everybody, enjoy Maui for the next 4 days. Coverage will begin in 3 minutes. We'll get Shot Tracker. We won't get coverage until 6 o'clock, but still enjoy the sights and sound. And we will see you next week for the Sony Open on Oahu. Cheers, everybody.